Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's meeting of the CFA Corporate Governance Committee. I'm chairing the meeting today as Councillor Bull, the Chair, has sent his apologies for this meeting. As you will be aware, the meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and will also be available for viewing after the meeting. The link is actually available on the CFA website. Some officers who are presenting reports will be joining this meeting virtually. Colin Faint, the CFO, Laura Haslam, the Monitoring Officer, and Colin Sharp, representing the Treasurer, are all here with us in the room. Can I please ask that all members and officers have their microphones on mute until they wish to speak or are invited to speak, and that officers show their video camera only when presenting reports. Do please ensure that mobile phones are switched off. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence, and so far I have Councillor Bull and Mr. Bray. Is that correct, Anna? Thank you. Now we will move to the first item on the agenda, the report. So the first item on the report is, does anyone have any interest in respect of any items on this agenda? No one. I want to see whether or not, I haven't been notified of any urgent items. Is that correct, Anna? There's nothing. And in terms of the Chairman's announcements, a copy has been circulated with this report. But there's one item I'd like to actually highlight, and this is the Have a Go Days. So the service is actively advertising Firefighter Have a Go Days ahead of the next firefighter recruitment exercise. The Firefighter Have a Go Taster Days will be taking place over the coming weeks to give people an insight into what the role of a firefighter entails, as well as the required strength, fitness and aptitude levels needed. It will also give potential applicants the chance to find out more information on how rewarding a career in the fire and rescue services and what the paths of progression are. So if you know anybody really that's interested in coming along and trying to find out more about the job, please do encourage them. In terms of the Pride, on Saturday the 4th of September, the service took part in the annual Leicester Pride event. Crews and managers took part in the parade, and the recruitment team were based in the area and used the event to promote the service recruitment campaign. I'm sorry to say this is probably one of the first ones that I've missed, but again, I think it's very important that we try and recruit from all sections of the population, so well done. So that's all the Chairman's announcements that I have to make. Okay, right, now we're going to item 5, which we need to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of July. I would like to sort of approve the minutes. Do I have a seconder? Neil. These are on pages 5 to 12 of your agenda. Okay. So I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of July 2021 be taken as read and confirmed and signed, and we have had our seconder. Okay. The next one is item number 6, which is the first report of the draft statement of accounts and annual government statement. This will be on pages 13 to 128 of your agenda pack. Colin Sharp will, as usual, be representing the Treasurer, and he will present the report to us. Over to you, Colin. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, members. I will just give a brief introduction to the report, and I'll be obviously happy to take any questions. So the purpose of the report is to provide this committee with an opportunity to consider the draft statement of accounts and annual governance statement for the financial year that ended on the 31st of March before they proceed to the Combined Fire Authority for approval, which we currently expect to be at the December CFA meeting following the completion of the audit. So the recommendation is say for the committee to consider the statement of accounts and to make any comments or observations on those. So just to pick out some of the key points from the executive summary, the statement of accounts was signed by Alison Greenhill as the treasurer and submitted to the external auditors Mazars and was published on the authority's website on the 31st of July. And the public inspection period commenced on the 1st of August. That's when the public can ask questions on the accounts. And that was all in compliance with the regulations for this year. So we hit all the necessary timescales in terms of publication of the accounts. Again, as you may well be familiar, the draft accounts are subject to ongoing review by Mazars, the external auditors, before they conclude their audit opinion and their value for money assessment. As we have advised members previously, Mazars have insufficient capacity to complete all of their audits within the required timescales. That's not uncommon at the moment across the local authority, police, fire sectors, and therefore the Leicestershire Fire Service audit is delayed, and they expect to complete it by the end of November. And as things stand, that seems it should be on track. The CFA formally agrees to statements of accounts and the annual governance statement, and hence we will take the final version to the CFA in December, subject to the audit having been completed. And therefore, the deadline of 30th of September in the regulations for the audit to be completed will not be met. As I say, I think about 40% of local authority audits won't meet that deadline this year. So just to pick out some of the background, obviously these are the statutory accounts that are external audited, and they are prepared in accordance with the various codes of practice and regulatory requirements. The actual financial position of the authority, which is probably of more interest to you, was submitted to the CFA in July. That sort of showed you the underspend for the year, the capital programme outturn, capital slippage, etc. So the statement of accounts is the statutory statement. The two do link up more visibly in some. Yeah, sorry, so I was waiting for that the feedback to go. That's slightly better, isn't it? So the outturn report as presented in July and the statutory statement do tie up, as you would expect, although it is more obvious in some parts than others, but we are able to demonstrate that where necessary. Paragraph 9 of the report just sets out, as I say, that the key point that both the outturn reports that we took in July and this statement of accounts are consistent. Highlights some of the key parts of the statements of accounts that are covered in those 100 pages. Paragraph 10, we use a number of accounting estimates when preparing the accounts. The main ones for the CFA property valuation of property, plant and equipment and pension scheme liability. And the AGS is the annual governance statement is an important document, important part of the accounts. It sets out the governance arrangements, how the authority manages itself, how it's properly governed, policies, procedures, etc. And it's important that members are comfortable with that. Just finally, to add to the report, really, that in terms of the role of this committee today and ultimately of CFA in December, really, members clearly, unless you happen to be an accountant, you're not accountants. You won't be expected to understand all the ins and outs of 100 pages of technical information, but you should be seeking to satisfy yourselves that the treasurer and staff have taken a professional approach to putting the accounts together, that we're able to inspire confidence and answer questions. You should also be able to gain assurance from the findings of the external auditor in due course. So when the accounts return for approval to CFA in December, that will be with the Mazars external auditors report. And again, they will highlight any concerns that they have or give us a clean audit, which was hopefully that's what it will be, but you'll be able to draw considerable assurance from the audit findings. And clearly you receive internal audit reports during the year, you receive budget monitoring reports during the year, you have the chance to ask us questions, you receive wider performance monitoring reports from Callum, etc. So you've got a whole suite of information that hopefully enables you to be confident that officers are taking a proper approach to all of this. And just to say also that some members present attended the training session earlier, which again was to support members of CGC and CFA in their role, understanding the statements of accounts and really how you should approach commenting on them and ultimately approving them. So thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Colin, and thank you again for the training this morning, which I found very helpful in getting me to understand the statement of accounts and how they are set out and so forth. Colin, I just wondered if you could assist me in one matter, and that's I'm asking for a little bit of clarity. Paragraph 6 of the executive summary, where you are indicating that the final version, after the external auditors have concluded their work, will come to a CFA meeting on the 15th of December. Could we clarify whether or not that meeting on the 15th of December has in fact been moved forward to the 3rd of December, and the meeting on the 15th of December has now been cancelled? And if that is the case, does that add extra pressure on Mazars to have a statement of accounts and the AGS ready for our meeting on the 3rd December?
Yes. Shall I answer? Yes, the meeting has been moved forward to the 3rd. Mr. Rushton agreed it with Callum that they'd move that forward.
I just wanted to make it clear that we will it will be completed by the deadline that was set. I was just looking at, you've given an update really on the position, and really the expectation is that it will come to the December meeting. Is that correct?
Certainly, Chair, for the 15th of December, that was absolutely the target. I will need to talk to Mazars. I wasn't aware that it had been pulled forward by 2 weeks. That will place some pressure on Mazars, I suspect, because clearly it isn't a case of finishing the audit on the 2nd of December and as presented on the 3rd. It depends where we are. It may well be we can issue an updated draft statement with the papers and then present and then advise you whether the audit is clear or not at the meeting. But I will take that back and discuss with Mazars.
Is everybody happy with that? I'm quite happy with that. I'd rather it would be done well, but within the period of time set. Thank you. Everyone else? So thank you very much indeed for that, Colin. So no other questions on that one. So we've considered the report. So I move that the draft statement of accounts and annual governance statement for 2020-2021 be approved for submission to the Combined Fire Authority for approval, noting that they may be subject to amendment following the external audit. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Neil. Very much indeed. Thank you. Is everybody in agreement? Yeah, okay then, thank you. So we move on to item 7, which is the performance monitoring April to July, and that's pages 129 to 166 on your report. Paul, I understand you will be presenting this report.
Thank you, Chair. It gives me pleasure to present the performance report from April to July 2021. Members would have had the report, however, I would like to highlight some key areas. Incidents, or the total number of incidents, are remaining pretty stable year to date, but comparative against the 3-year average, they're lower. And again, part of that is impacted due to the COVID-19 pandemic. You will also see there's a significant reduction in the number of secondary fires. And again, that is related in part to the weather conditions that we've had over the summer period, whereas they weren't as warm as our busiest period in July 2018. Members will also note the number of special incidents or special services that we've attended remains significantly high, and that is due in part to gaining entry on behalf of our partner agencies. We have seen an increase within that particular area. Members will also note that we've had a fire fatality back in June, And again, the fire investigation has concluded on that particular incident, and it was due to carelessly discarded smoking materials. The report has been completed and submitted to the coroner. The inquest date for that incident has yet to be confirmed. Members will also note the appliance availability figure, and you may be drawn to the fact that in July, availability was at a low. And again, investigations have identified that that was due to the pandemic and the Pingate issue that affected the whole of the country. It's pleasing to note, whilst it's not in the report, that our on-call appliance availability has risen in August back up to 61%. Prevention and protection work is continuing, and we're still utilising a mixture of telephone calls and in-person visits. And again, compared to the 3-year average, our numbers in that area are significantly improved. I'd like to also draw members' attention to the attendance times for life risk incidents, our P1 calls. You'll see that whilst we're just outside of our 10-minute target time, we're currently 10 minutes, 13 seconds. It is a significant improvement and a real positive improvement from the 10 minutes, 48 seconds that we've averaged over the previous 3 years. And again, the average response time to non-life risk incidents is at 10 minutes, 1 second. And the difference in the reason we have 2 different figures on that is the time taken to get addresses. So if we have we have a road traffic collision in the rural locations, by the time the control operators have gleaned the information of the exact whereabouts, that does impact on our attendance times. That concludes my update, and I'm happy to answer questions, Chair.
Much fun. Any questions? Mine is just, oh yeah, sorry, did you put up your hand? Yes, Neil.
Excuse me, yes, I need to be on my microphone. You partially answered the question. It's with regard to the appliance availability and how the figures have been affected. Largely in part, I gathered because of the pandemic. But thank you for the update about the August figures. Fingers crossed, do you think the pandemic is now reduced considerably and that the appliance availability figures will see an improvement when we see the next quarter figures?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. I do believe that the July figures have adversely affected the availability. We are starting to see an increase in on-call availability. Our hard work in trying to continue that upward trend of appliance availability is continuing. We are being flexible, as reported in full CFA, around how we move our resources around. Added to the work that we're doing for on-call recruitment, we have an on-call recruitment that has just started over the last month. We're going to hopefully start to see that positive increase in on-call availability across the service. Councillor, thank you.
Very much. When reading this report too, I think the service needs to be commended because during COVID times, what we've seen is an improvement in the average response times, and that's been very good. But I do have concerns personally about the impact in COVID in the terms of the number of firefighters having to self-isolate. And I just wondered, has that had an impact on the protection and the preventative work that the service actually does? I think you really ought to be commended for doing what you've done so far in these difficult times, but it would be interesting to know the impact, the wider impact on the service.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've read the report, and it's most things seem to be fine. But I have a small, I wouldn't say question. I just wanted to know about the home's fire safety checks and smoke alarms. Whereas the home safety checks, we have almost maintained it as per the previous parameters. So how is it that home safety feedback surveys, just about 50% of what the job you undertook in terms of home safety checks? And the second question is about the secondary fire, where you touched on the concept that due to weather, but I think 30% less, there may be some other cause to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll answer those ones if that's agreeable. I think if we start with your original question, Chair, around the impact of COVID and absence rates from the workforce, there were two distinct peaks throughout the entire period of COVID, and July was the second one and the most significant for the workforce. As I reported to the full CFA at the last meeting, we were seeing just over or very close to 100 people absent from the workforce. That has significantly dropped off. That 2 to 3 week period was significant for the whole country, actually. Shortly after that period, the fire and rescue services were granted a number of exemptions under the test and trace or test to release. A number of programs are available to us. So I think to answer some of the questions, as the pandemic moves forward, I believe now we've got the measures to make sure we are protected and are operationally available, as we have been throughout the whole pandemic. And in fact, that month is the worst month for us for a number of reasons. But I am confident now that the safety measures are in place, but equally our crew numbers won't drop to that level again. So I can give you a high degree of assurance that we are in a much, much better place, partly due to our crewing numbers, number of people within the workforce, simply because we've saw or welcomed on board 15 new recruits as well. But equally, the measures and the safety guards around that are much better and much more robust now, and a number of restrictions have been lifted across the country. So yes, please be assured we are able to continue to deliver service delivery as good as we have been throughout. I'd also like to suggest that whilst we did see some of those second appliances not become available, our attendance times to life-threatening incidents weren't detrimentally affected by that issue either. So please, hopefully the members can be assured by some of that. The home fire safety checks, it's an area that I'm really pushing from the organisation at the moment to continually increase the number of home fire safety checks we undertake in the public. In fact, bear with me. You also asked about our prevention and protection activities, and I think it's fair to say our prevention activities, which is fire protection, working with businesses, working with the legislative side of Fire and Rescue Services Act and the Fire Safety Order, has remained unchanged. We are continually out in the community, continually inspecting and auditing premises, and actually ACO Western's teams are delivering far in excess of what we could have asked for them. So a really encouraging story. I think when it comes to community safety and fire prevention, we have been somewhat limited because we haven't been able to interact with the communities in the way that we normally would do. And again, the service has risen to that challenge really well, and we've discovered new ways of doing things, whether it be via Zoom, Teams or more remote. But I won't shy away from the fact I think we haven't been able to do as much face-to-face engagement as we would have liked. Having said that, we're now coming out the tail end. A number of restrictions have gone, and even yesterday we welcomed over 100 people to Birstall Fire Station on the release of our new road safety vehicle. An amazing event, really well received by all parties that were there, and should enable us to be at the forefront or the sharp end of road safety for the country, let alone Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. So some really good work. Home fire safety check, coming to your question, Councillor. They're a really important piece of our prevention work that we do, very bespoke to the individuals and their households. And I'm really encouraged to see that our numbers are continually rising. I'm pressurising the surface. Productivity is key for us and will be a key identifier for both the inspectorate, but also how we're doing amongst our communities. So the numbers will continue to go up. The number of surveys completed is a very fair challenge, and it has dropped significantly. I don't have the answer to why that is, but I will commit to going away and researching that for you, because it is a big big drop off, and I think that's a very fair observation. I also think that the council is very right. Secondary fires, yes, it has been impacted by the weather. We see that traditionally year on year across the whole sector. If you have a hot summer, you tend to see more secondary fires because of the dry conditions. But I also think the lockdowns have had a significant impact on that, as well as some of those incidents can be caused by young adults or youths, whether it be horseplay, whether it be deliberate fire setting, etc. So actually, I think the pandemic from that side of it has actually had a positive effect on our number of secondary incidents. But the Assistant Chief's absolutely right. The weather is a key driver in that. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just ask something? I mean, we mentioned surveys, and I just wondered, with especially younger people, they use different forms of social media, etc. And I just wonder, how good are we at responding to those new challenges in terms of young people and their media?
Yes. So engagement is a complicated topic at the best of times, as we've seen with our integrated risk management plan, the full public consultations, where we can demonstrate we reached over 70,000 members of our community, but only received around about 300 to 400 responses. So engagement is a tough subject for us at the best of times. Our social media or our corporate communications team are on as many social media platforms as we can physically be at the moment. And the following is reasonable. I won't say it's exceptional, but it's reasonable. And we try to get as much interaction and engagement as we can do. I think it's one of those areas, as soon as we get onto one platform, the trend is onto another one. And I think TikTok is the latest one that I don't understand that. And I'd like to think I'm relatively young as well. But yeah, engagement is difficult for us, which is where after the incident surveys are so key. We're now trying to up those numbers to make sure the community is receiving the service that they expect, and they can quite rightly expect a high service from us. So, and again, I think we've spoken about it previously, that the satisfaction rates are incredibly high, and that's a great thing. But it also leaves us to ask the question of, are we asking the right questions and are we getting the right feedback? And that will continue to evolve, and we'll continue to evaluate our activities as we move forward. Hopefully that answers your question, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else like to ask any further questions? No.
Yes, Chair. Second.
Takes us on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Service Development Programme, item 8. So who's presenting? Paul, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, members would have had the paper and areas that I would like to cover. If I start off around projects and giving members an update as to where we are with the key service projects. The appliance replacement project, the 4 new appliances that they've been built, they've been signed off and they've been delivered. There's now a delay to their operational use, and that's due to the external engineers requiring to fit mobile data terminals. Now, mobile data terminals are key in delivering an essential service. It allows crews to access risk information. It allows them to access data in relation to vehicles. If their vehicles are involved in a road traffic collision, they can extract the data looking at airbags. We're hoping that delay will be resolved very shortly, and the delivery of them on station and their operational availability will be by the end of October this year. If I move on to the virtual fatal flaw replacement project, I'm pleased to say yesterday's launch was the Hazard Express, as we're now calling it. It was a fantastic event attended by over 150 people. Services from up and down the country as far as Scotland have visited the service. They saw the launch of the vehicle. That has led to a number of bookings for the vehicle to attend some events to deliver the key safety messages, not only around road safety, but also we call them the 90-second lifesavers. So it's about pedestrian safety, safety within the community. So that's launched yesterday, which is really pleasing to see. The fleet replacements project from 2020 to 2021. Again, the minibus that was part of the fleet replacement strategy is now operational within the service. The welfare vehicle is currently at the bodybuilders, so they're building the vehicle that will give us a welfare vehicle for operational incidents for the foreseeable future. Again, there have been a number of delays to these vehicles coming live, and again, that is due to the pandemic. But again, we're hoping to have all of those vehicles operationally available by October this year. If I move on to our plan in the appendix, there's some points that I'd like to draw out of there. So if I look at one of our first aim, where we want to achieve fewer incidents with a lower impact, again, our fire safety inspecting team are on track to deliver our risk-based inspection programme. They've had the added pressure of the building risk review that has come from central government, and that's highlighted 115 tall buildings that we've had to go out and we've had to inspect. And that was from the Grenfell Phase 1 outcomes. And we're offering the responsible person the guidance around how they can prevent any future incidents happening in that type of premise. If I move on to the second aim, respond effectively to incidents. Again, we're looking at alternative crewing duty systems that will come to full CFA of how we can actually be effectively and efficient within our response to those incidents. Again, if I move on to aim 5, and that's providing insurance, following the findings of the multiculturalism fire safety reports and taking positive feedback from corporate governance at the previous meeting, work has commenced around making sure that we have a more comprehensive library of images that we can sell the Fire and Rescue Service or Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service to the community, going away from the dramatic incidents of firefighters in breathing apparatus tackling fires to a more friendly face. That work has commenced. And again, as part of providing assurance, the implementation of our HMIC FRS action plan, that work is now continuing within the service. We're closing some of those gaps and starting to prepare for the inspection that's hopefully happening in April next year. I'm happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thank you for that report, Paul. Very basic question, I'm afraid. In respect of the appliance replacement project, what happens to the appliances that are replaced?
Again, thank you for the question, Councillor. When the vehicles are replaced, they come to the end of their lifespan. So we decommission the appliances, and then previously other services have taken those on. We've sent fire appliances abroad to enable those countries that may not have a fire appliance with that technology. We look to sell those or abroad to enable them to have obviously it's not modern for us, a more modern appliance for themselves.
So it does generate a small piece of income for the Fire and Rescue Service.
Yes, it does.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, that was a very good report. I just want to know about, there are certain utilities which have been in the pipeline for quite a while. And one of them is high captain's replacement. We are talking about aerial ladder platform vehicles. Now, how sure are we that this vehicle will finally be expected to be completed by December 2022. And the second bit is regarding the emergency services network. Can you please expand on that? Because this has been on the agenda for quite a while as well. I mean, for years together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, I'll answer your first question first. The high reach appliance, I'm really pleased to say we've gone out to procurement. We've established the vehicle. We had a working group involving our staff, the actual users of the vehicle. The order has now gone in, and I'm led to believe the vehicle is in build. There is a waiting list for high reach appliances. We have booked a slot. The vehicle is out, and I think the build has started, and we're hoping that it will be delivered in time for the closure report. To go on to your second point around the Emergency Services Network, or ESN, this is a government-led project. We have seen a number of delays to the project. The deliverable of it is outside of our control. We have no control over the actual infrastructure because it's a national project. We do have a project lead. We are working extremely hard. We are looking at the infrastructure that Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service has to have in place for the launch of that project. And I believe that we are in a good place. We are ready to receive ESN, and once the project is coming to a conclusion from a national perspective, I think we'll be fully on board and ready to receive the ESN project. Thank you.
Any further questions? Can I move that we accept the report? Can I have a seconder, please? I move that the progress made since July 2021 in the delivery of projects within the Service Development Programme and the tasks that are included in our plan 2020 to 2024 be noted. Can I have a seconder, please? Okay, second. Thank you very much, Dave. Everybody in agreement? Which then brings us on to item 9, which is the financial monitoring to the end of July 2021. And the Treasurer will take us through this report. Thank you, Colin.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so this is the financial monitoring report to the end of July, as stated. It's the first in the budget monitoring cycle, and it presents the key issues arising from the revenue budget and capital programme as at the end of July 21, obviously plus any major issues that we've identified subsequently. And we will be bringing future reports in accordance with the normal budget monitoring cycle. So the committee is asked to note the revenue and capital position, to approve the transfer of £440,000 of unbudgeted grant income to the budget strategy and COVID-19 earmark reserve to help with future years' budgets, and also to note that the Chief Fire Officer intends to bring forward proposals to fund priority development and improvement initiatives from the forecast additional income stroke underspends. So just picking out some points from the report, the report shows an overall forecast underspend of £453,000. This is not unexpected. It's a result of vacancies during the year, employees on lower points within grades, and the ongoing lower retained on-call costs, which was likely to occur. Certainly the on-call cost being lower was something we knew about going into the budget process. But pending the successes to day crewing plus the budget is being kept at the existing level, although recognising it was unlikely to be spent in full, and that indeed is proving to be the case once again. We've also received unbudgeted grant income of £375,000 from the New Dimensions grant. And again, some members, you may recall that we budget at a lower rate for the new dimensions grants than what we tend to receive. The government doesn't tell us in time each year how much of that grant we will receive. So we're cautious with the budgeting, but recognising we'll probably receive more, and that again is what has happened. There's also been unbudgeted income from the business rates pilot. So a couple of years ago, Leicestershire, the Leicestershire councils and the Fire Authority, and I think the police took part in it. Not police, the councils and the Fire Authority took part in a 1-year business rates pilot. That was to do with looking at possible changes to the national business rate system in future. That was a 1-year pilot only, and now that the accounts for that are finalised, the Fire Authority share that is £65,000. So we brought that in. So that has now been received from County Council as a lead authority and brought into account. Capital programme has £800,000 spent to date. £1.2 million of slippage has been identified. As referenced in previous reports, some of that refers to the aerial platform, ladder, appliance. So the money will be spent, but not necessarily this year. Paragraph 8 in the table, that just gives you a bit more detail on that £453,000 underspend. I won't go through the table, but you can see really we're forecasting that on employees and everything else at this stage of the year more or less on target. Just to pick up again, moving through the report, paragraph 9, little point 5, little point V. The firefighters pay award has been agreed from the 1st of July, and the support staff award is not yet finalised. We fortunately included a provision within the budget for pay awards, notwithstanding the public sector pay freeze that had been announced nationally at the time we set the budget. We weren't sure that would apply to local authority and fire service staff. That proved to be correct. As it happens, by a stroke of brilliant budgeting, the actual cost of the pay award looks fairly similar to the provision that they made in the accounts. And I think we're in quite a different position to some fire authorities that actually are now struggling to identify where the funding for the firefighters and support staff pay award is going to come from. Income, just moving down the page, as I mentioned, we've received higher new dimensions funding than we included in the budget and the business rates pilot. We're assuming that will be transferred directly to reserves, as I've summarised in the recommendations, to support future budget strategies. I would also just pick up on Forge Health Limited. This is the wholly owned company, so the Fire Authority owns Forge Health. This provides occupational health services both to Leicestershire and also sells its services elsewhere. Due to the pandemic and some staffing shortages, that hasn't been able to sell its services externally to the envisaged extent last year. So the budgeted dividend wasn't received last year, and it doesn't look like it will be generated this year either. So that will be a shortfall. But there is quite a lot of work going on to bring the Forge Health operation back to where it needs to be, and make sure it is fully staffed and able to operate properly once the pandemic restrictions are over. Capital programme, as I mentioned, that's shown in more detail on the table at the top of page 182. And again, you can see the main slippage areas on vehicles, being the aerial ladder platform and the driver training pump that we mentioned. There's also slippage on the scheme to remodel the headquarters canteen area, which some of you may recall. And I understand that the Chief Fire Officer will be bringing a report to the December CFA meeting regards that area of fire headquarters and the plans for it. And I think we've again on the previous report mentioned the fire control project slippage. So I think, Chair, that concludes my overview, and I'm obviously happy to take any comments and questions from members.
Any questions? I have a sort of that question. I'm quite happy. I've been looking at the canteen. I remember when the building was first opened and the canteen was well in use, and it sort of went downhill over the years. And I just wondered, it's a wonderful big space. I just wonder if there's any thought being given going into the future use of that particular area, because it's a wonderful space. It's just begging to be used.
Thank you, Chair. I'll answer that one if you're agreeable. Clearly, it's an underutilised space in the service at the moment, and the building was designed pre-austerity, delivered just as austerity came. So there is some other uses that we could make of that area within headquarters, undoubtedly. Proposals were brought forward to the CFA a number of months ago to look at the appetite and viability to change that into office space and the potential for that to be rented out to generate income. We've now undertaken that review and scoped the market. Now that we're coming out the end of a pandemic approach, it's looking unlikely we would be able to rent that to an external party, so it wouldn't really generate an income. The paper that will come back to authority in the coming weeks or months will actually look at alternative options of what we could do with that space, as there is an appetite from the service to develop that to make it more usable for a learning development, community engagement and various other bits and pieces. But we are conscious that differs from the original stated paper to the CFA, so it will come back to CFA for consideration. But I think we have to be realistic. If we were to convert it into offices now, we wouldn't be able to rent that out for any kind of income for the CFA.
Thank you very much. Anyone wanting to ask any further questions? I have another one, if I may. It's Forge Health, really. And I noticed that there's an income shortfall. Do we know what's going to happen in the future about Forge Health, how well it's being used and whether or not it's a viable organisation as well? Thank you.
So Forge Health is it's the external company that's owned by the CFA, but it does provide Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service with its occupational health provision, which is a very important provision. It helps us get our staff back to work at the quickest possible timescale, get them back onto fire engines or within their professional support function. So it's a valuable asset to Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service. But it also takes a number of other contracts with private companies that pay to use the facilities. We are confident once there is some further capacity within Forge Health to do more of that private work without detrimentally affecting Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service, and that would then produce the dividend for the CFA and to put into the funds. So yes, I believe Forge Health is still a viable option for the CFA and Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service, but it isn't maximising its potential at the moment because we haven't been able to attract new customers due to the pandemic. What I would say is that the staff within Forge Health, incredible staff, very dedicated, very good at their job. It is a very sellable asset. We just need the climate to come around for people looking for that occupational health provision. So yes, I would suggest there is still some gas in the tank for Forge Health, and I believe over the fullness of time it will offer us some further opportunities.
Can I say thank you for that more positive spin on it all? I remember past work of theirs. So what I would want to do now is moving. Nobody else wants to ask a question. Did you put your hand up, Colin?
So, Chair, I was just also going to just to add to Callum's comments that the shortfall there is on the dividend, the budgeted dividend payment back from Forge Health. But as Callum says, the staff engaged around Forge Health do a lot of work for Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service. If we didn't have those, that would almost certainly cost the fire service more money. So whilst on the one hand, it looks like there's a loss of income, which there is because it hasn't paid a dividend. On the other hand, it's probably still is a much cheaper and better way of providing the service internally than if we had to buy that from somebody else.
Indeed. So it's now up to me just to read out the recommendations. I move that the Revenue Budget and Capital Programme position, as noted at the end of July 2021, be noted. The transfer of 440,000 of unbudgeted grant income to the budget strategy and have I my right? 400. Yeah, 400. Did I say 440,000 unbudgeted grant income to the budget strategy and COVID-19 earmark reserve be approved to assist with the future year's budget strategy. I also would like to say that it be noted that the CFO intends to bring forward proposals to fund priority development and improvement initiatives from the forecast underspends. Could I have a seconder? Thank you. Yeah. Now this takes us on to item 10, which is progress against the internal audit and the Treasurer's plan. This on pages 185 to 202. He's online.
He's here.
Oh, yeah, I can see him now.
So if you just press on.
We have Matt Davis, the Internal Audit Manager, here to present the report to us today.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes. Thank you for the opportunity to update the committee in respect of our progress. It's progress against the internal audit plan that was agreed with this committee back on the 10th of March. So moving straight on to paragraph 6 of the report, this explains that there were 12 distinct areas that were approved on the 10th of March. But subsequent to this, there were 2 other pieces of work that we needed to undertake. And just to update the committee, that was a follow-up piece of work in respect of a legacy high importance recommendation. And then we did have a piece of work that straddled 2 financial years. Obviously, the world doesn't end on the 31st of March. We naturally have work that straddles 2 financial years, and there was a piece to complete. So we're reporting against 14 distinct areas in total. Paragraph 6 highlights progress at the time of compiling the report as to where we are at, or where we were at, with those 14 distinct areas. And it's summarised as 2 were finalised, 1 was in draft, 8 were in work in progress, and 3 were not started at all. To bring this committee totally up to date, as I like to do, it's improved further since then, in as much as we've now got 3 pieces of work that are final. This is because the one that was reported to the committee as being draft has now been finalised last week. But I think it's important to note, obviously, we've got 11 areas there and you're tracking progress against plan. 11 areas that are work in progress or not started. And I'm comfortable in saying there are justifiable reasons for each. And so I'm content with the stage that each job is at the minute. So, you know, I'd say I'm happy with where we are for this time in our reporting cycle. The next important thing is to recap the high importance recommendations, which are dealt with in paragraph 8 of this report. Just to bring all councillors up to speed, there were 2 high importance legacy recommendations that were still in this committee domain previously, and now there's important to note there's a 3rd in relation to the key reconciliations of balances audit, the audit I mentioned just previously that straddled 2 financial years. This resulted in a partial opinion audit report and high importance recommendations. So moving on to these high importance recommendations specifically, these are detailed in paragraph 13. So just to update you, the first legacy recommendation was in respect of contract procedure rules. And the current status where we're at with that is we are literally testing at the moment, and we'll be able to report back to the committee in November about it. The legacy recs and balances high importance recommendation, we were going to follow up as part of this year's work, prior year work, the 2021 work, in the hope of closing it off. However, as we've already stated, our 2021 work did show that there was some areas that led to a partial opinion and a high importance recommendation again. Specifically, it's down there in paragraph 13, but in 2 areas relating to reconciliations. So because the previous legacy high recommendation was always also covering that area, we've got all 3 remain in the committee regime to be retested. And so I'll update the committee again in November in respect of those. I think it's important to preempt an obvious question, and that is you've got key reconciliations and balances mentioned in 2 audits. Yes, we have, but it's important to stress that the issues we found in 1920 and 2021 are not really directly related. This is because the 1920 concerns related to prompt independent reconciliations. And what I mean by that is a segregation of duties in the process that someone else was independently checking. The 2021 concerns, if I'm just summarising them, were more in relation to imbalances and unreconciled items. So whilst there was a segregation of duties in the process, obviously the segregation is, the purpose of that is twofold. First of all, it's someone else involved in the process. But secondly, it's to ensure the adequacy of the work completed and the actual sign off of it. So it was part two of that we still need to retest again to be able to satisfy ourselves. So in concluding the progress fee plan update, I'm happy in terms of the audit coverage for this stage of the financial year, with now 3 of 14 pieces of work finalised. There are 3 reports with partial assurances that are in the committee regime still. We're currently testing all of these. We'll report them back to the November committee. But I think I'm at pains to say the most important thing is we've got full cooperation and support of the officers at Leicestershire Fire and Rescue in order to address these. So they're fully on side, they're working with us to be able to look at those and retest them in time for November's committee. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the floor? No. There's no questions, Colin. Thank you very much. The committee is asked, in terms of recommendation, the committee is asked to note the report and the fact that A, 2 audits are complete, B, a key financials audit for the prior financial year was awarded a partial assurance, and C, 2 other legacy partial assurance ratings remain, but there are no other partial assurance ratings in the current financial year to date. So the committee are asked to note that. Can I have a seconder, please? Okay. Thanks. Sorry, I always think my voice is loud enough. Right, shall we go on to item 11, which is our final report, and it's on the Organisational Risk Register. This is on pages 203 to 228 of your agenda pack, and we go back to Paul for this report. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that the Organisational Risk Register is put before Corporate Governance Committee. The general position statement is really positive. Organisational risk management continues on track with a long-term downward progression of risk being reported. There are a number of decreases in the risk. So 1505 industrial action by operational staff has decreased. The risk on this has decreased, and this is due to the implementation of a third-party provision should operational staff choose to carry out industrial action. We have secured 6 appliances, which meets our minimum degradation policy. Members will also note that there as a change to 1705, the risks from the Grenfell Tower report has now changed to a failure to learn assessment. This was the view of the senior management team. There are multiple national incidents that have learning from. So rather than just the Grenfell, we've put these together. So we may have learning from the Balmoral bar fire. We've put those risks together now into one particular risk entitled failure to learn. And members will also note that the risk remains with regards to the mobilising system. But please be assured that we are managing this appropriately, both internally and also with our joint control room partners in Notts and Derby. I'm happy to take any questions on the organisational risk.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. Any questions of Paul? Neil?
In terms of risk, how does what appears to be growing nature of quite serious disruption to traffic and business caused by groups such as Extinction Rebellion and Climate Insulate? I know that will be on the radar of the Fire and Rescue Service. Because of the nature of what we're hearing recently, it appears to be a growing risk. How is that being catered for in the risk register?
I'll take that one, thank you. So thankfully, emergency services and indeed partner organisations are quite well prepared for these types of events. Most of all, it would be delivered through the local resilience forum, and certainly for Extinction Rebellion and the more physical protests, that would be managed through the police and a public order operation. Thankfully, to date, we've had very limited, if any, of that activity within Leicester, Leicestershire or Rutland. Rest assured, all emergency services are well trained on any public order events, managing large-scale events, whether that be a demonstration or something of a more happier occasion, maybe, such as Leicester City winning the FA Cup and the parades that follow through that. So we're well linked in with our local resilience partners and other emergency services. In the event a protest is called within our county area or our service area, a police operation would be initiated and we would be involved at an operational, tactical and strategic level. And that's very much in the command element of or operational element of our skills and natures. And we are well trained and rehearsed in delivering operations of that nature.
Can I just come back on that? My question was really designed about the closure of roads and the prevention of appliances getting to incidents that may be caused during a major event, such as the ones we've seen recently.
Yep, sorry, I must have gone off on a tangent there. So road closures actually are more common across the service area than people are probably aware. We've got a well-tested system of being notified of road closures, whether they are still passable for emergency vehicles under emergency conditions or not. So we've got a very strong information network that allows us to know about the road closures in advance. Slightly different if that is a legal protest that hasn't been gone through the correct channels. But we would respond to that in the ways that we see fit and able to. So again, I would suggest we've got quite a strong structure and ability to process road closures, share that information with crews operationally. And in the event that it does happen in an unlawful way, the police operation would still be kicked off in an emergency phase, and we would pass that out to our crews, whether that be via the mobile data terminals on the fire engines, or if they're at station, we would alert the station via our turnout systems. So again, some assurance that we are geared up for these type of events and are able to process and share that information as soon as physically possible.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Don't need him. I'm just going to go do that. Yeah. So thank you very much for attending this meeting. So I'd like to remind you that the date of the next meeting of this committee will be held on Wednesday, the 24th of November 2021 at 2 p.m. So that's the corporate governance date of the next corporate governance meeting. Thank you all very much for coming along. Thank you.